My wife and I were sitting in a restaurant when a man rushed over, pointed at me, and snarled, "Who is this?" My wife froze. Sup, Reddit. Names. Damien, 34, male, 6 years of marriage. And I thought I had it all figured out. Turns out my wife had been living a double life and clowning me behind my back. Grab some popcorn and enjoy the show. I remember checking my watch, wondering if the waiter forgot about our appetizers. 8 p.m. on a Saturday night, our 6th wedding anniversary. Catherine had picked the restaurant, some overpriced place downtown. She said she wanted somewhere special. Let me tell you about my wife. Catherine was the kind of woman who thought the world owed her something. Beautiful, sure. High cheekbones, perfect hair, a smile that could get her whatever she wanted. But underneath all that, she was always doing the math on what everyone could do for her. I didn't see it when we were dating, but by year 3, I definitely did. By year 6, I just accepted it as the cost of keeping the peace. That was my first mistake. The second was thinking the peace was worth keeping. I'm a plumber. I own my own business, 12 employees and contracts with 3 property management companies across the city. Not glamorous work, but I built something real from nothing. Started with a van and a wrench. Now I've got an office, a warehouse, and a reputation. That keeps the phone ringing. Catherine never missed a chance to remind people at parties that her husband fixed toilets for a living. She'd laugh like it was a joke, then change the subject to something that made her look better. It was never a joke. The restaurant was packed that night. Couples everywhere. First dates and anniversaries and the occasional awkward business dinner. She was being extra charming, kept touching my hand across the table, laughing at things that weren't funny, complimenting my shirt like she hadn't seen it 100 times before. She was nervous. That's when I noticed movement from across the room. A guy heading straight toward us. Tall, athletic build, dark hair. He wasn't scanning for an empty table. He was locked onto us, coming right at our table with an expression that said someone was about to have a very bad night. He stopped right next to us and pointed his finger directly at me. His voice was loud enough that the surrounding tables went quiet. Who is this, Catherine? I looked at my wife, expecting her to laugh it off, but she didn't laugh. She didn't say anything. Her face went white. Her hand started trembling. The silence stretched. 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Felt like forever. I turned back to the guy, made direct eye contact, and something passed between us. His eyes flicked to Catherine's frozen face, registered her obvious guilt, then came back to me. I watched him do the math. He blinked, took a half step back, his posture shifted. "Oh man, my bad," he said, his voice completely different now. Casual, embarrassed. "I thought she was someone else. You too. Look just like, never mind. Wrong couple. Sorry about that. Enjoy your dinner." Smooth. He gave me the slightest nod. Barely noticeable, something Catherine couldn't have seen from her angle, and turned away, walked back across the restaurant like nothing had happened. Catherine let out this huge breath. Her color slowly returned. "That was so weird," she said, her voice a little too high. "Must have mistaken me for someone. People say I have one of those faces." Crazy, right? Crazy, I agreed. But I was already thinking that guy knew her name. He'd said Catherine clear as day. He knew exactly who she was. And the way she'd frozen told me everything her mouth was too smart to admit. We finished dinner. Catherine relaxed as the evening went on, probably convincing herself that I'd bought the mistaken identity story. She ordered dessert, talked about wanting to redo the master bathroom, and mentioned something about her sister Daphne coming to visit next weekend. Normal stuff. I nodded along, said the right things at the right times while my brain quietly ran through every suspicious moment from the past year. Late nights at work that didn't match her actual workload. Weekend brunches with friends I'd never met. Phone calls she'd taken another room. Texts that made her smile in ways she never smiled at me anymore. All those little moments I'd written off as normal marriage stuff were suddenly forming a pattern so obvious I felt like an idiot for missing it. When she excused herself to use the restroom, I moved fast. I grabbed a napkin from our Table wrote my phone number on it with the pen I always carry and flagged down. Our waiter, see that guy at the bar? Dark hair, gray shirt. The waiter glanced over. Yeah, give him this. Tell him we should talk. The waiter looked at the napkin, then at me, then at the empty chair where Catherine had been sitting. Rough night, he asked. Dude, you have no idea. He pocketed the napkin. I got you. And for what it's worth, I've seen that lady in here before. She wasn't with you. Middle of the afternoon, maybe 2 months ago. Same guy from the bar. The bill was already pushing 300, so I just rounded up to an even number and added 20 more. For his trouble, worth it for that piece of information. Catherine came back from the bathroom with fresh lipstick and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We drove home in comfortable silence. She fell asleep quickly that night, probably exhausted from the adrenaline crash. I laid awake until 3 o'clock in the morning, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail, waiting for my phone to ring. His name was Enzo. He called me at noon. The next day, the conversation was short, careful, both of us dancing around the obvious. Neither of us wanted to say too much over the phone. We agreed to meet at a diner on the east side of town. I told Catherine I had an emergency call from one of my property management clients, some burst pipe in a commercial building that needed immediate attention. She barely looked up from her phone, didn't even ask which building. 6 years of marriage, and she couldn't be bothered to fake interest in my work for 5 seconds. Enzo was already in a booth when I arrived, back to the wall facing the door. I slid into the seat across from him. Neither of us spoke for a solid minute. Just two guys sitting in a diner booth trying to figure out what you're supposed to say to the man who's been sleeping with your wife. The waitress came by. We both ordered coffee and she left us alone. This is weird, Enzo said finally. Yeah, I keep thinking I should apologize, but I'm not sure what I'd be apologizing for. I didn't know. I know you didn't. No. He stirred his coffee. 6 months, he said. She told me she was separated. Said her husband was basically just a roommate, that the divorce papers were already being drawn up, that she was just waiting for everything to finalize before moving out. I nodded, processing. We've been married 6 years. No separation, no divorce papers, not even a serious argument about it. We just had our anniversary dinner. She picked the restaurant. Enzo closed his eyes, pinched the bridge of his nose. I feel like a complete idiot. Join the club. She had this whole story about an emotionally unavailable husband who made her feel invisible, said you worked all the time, never took her anywhere, made her feel like furniture. Something twisted in my chest because she'd thought about me enough to craft a whole story. I took her to a restaurant last night that cost me $300. I said I take her on vacation every year. I bought her a car last spring because she said her old one made her look unsuccessful, but sure, emotionally unavailable. Yeah, well, she's good at telling people what they want to hear. That was the first true thing anyone had said about Catherine in years. So what do we do about it? Enzo asked. That was the question I'd been working on all night. The old version of me would have confronted Catherine immediately, demanded answers, probably ended up looking like the crazy, jealous husband, while she cried and twisted and gaslit her way out of it. I'd seen her operate that way before, when her friend accused her of spreading a rumor at a party. Catherine turned the whole thing around so thoroughly that the friend ended up apologizing. The woman could manipulate anyone. I want a divorce. I said, my lawyer said adultery could matter here. Yes, I already contacted a lawyer that morning that if I can document it, I come out ahead in the settlement. If it's just my word against hers, she's got a 50-50 shot and a lifetime of practice making herself look like the victim. And you want my help? You've been seeing her for 6 months. You know her schedule, her lies, her patterns better than I do at this point. Help me document everything and I'll make sure you come out of this clean. Just two guys who got played by the same woman getting even together. Enzo thought about it, drummed his fingers on the table, looked out the window. I've got a decent job, he said finally. Good reputation. Last thing I need is being known as the guy who broke up some Family man's marriage. You didn't break up anything. She did. I'm offering you a chance to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. 10 more seconds of silence. Then he stuck out his hand. All right, I'm in. What do you need? Over the next 3 hours, fueled by bad diner coffee and worse diner food, we mapped out everything. Enzo gave me dates, times, locations, hotels they'd used, restaurants they visited. The apartment she told him was her temporary place while the fake divorce finalized. That apartment was actually her sister Daphne's, which explained a whole lot. Daphne was Catherine's younger sister by 3 years. She'd been covering for Catherine the entire time, providing alibis and cover stories and a convenient address for extramarital activities. Every time Catherine said she was at Daphne's place, she was actually with Enzo. Every time she said Daphne needed help with something, she was actually somewhere a wife shouldn't be. Sisters working as a team to fool everyone around them. Does Daphne have a boyfriend? I asked. Yeah, some finance guy. Tyler something. She's been dating him about a year. So Tyler has no idea. His girlfriend's been running cover for a cheater. No clue. Seems like a decent guy too. Met him once when he came by to pick Daphne up. I filed that information away for later. Before we left, Enzo asked me something that caught me off guard. How are you so calm about this? If I found out my wife was cheating, I'd be punching walls. I thought about it. I think I stopped being surprised by Catherine a long time ago. I said, finally, this just confirmed what I already suspected, but didn't want to prove. He nodded like he understood. For what it's worth, she talked about you sometimes. Made you sound like a total loser. But sitting here across from you, I see a guy who's about to handle his business. Thanks, Enzo. Now let's figure out how to take her down. He grinned. I think I'm going to like working with you. The next 3 weeks were the most productive stretch of my life. I had 2 people helping me besides Enzo, my younger brother Sam, who worked at a law office downtown, and my buddy Ricky, who'd been my best friend since high school and was good with money. Between the 4 of us, we started building a case. Sam walked me through what I'd need for an fault. Divorce in our state, what kind of evidence mattered, how to protect my assets before filing, that sort of thing. He also connected me with a divorce attorney his office had worked with before, a woman named Margaret who had a reputation for not messing around. Ricky helped me dig through our finals. He spent a weekend going through bank statements and credit card records looking for anything that didn't add up. What he found made me sick. Catherine had been skimming money for over a year. Small amounts, nothing that would have jumped out at me, but consistent. She'd also opened a credit card I didn't know about and run up 12 grand in charges. Hotels, restaurants, a spa weekend she told me was a work conference. All of it documented with dates that matched nights she'd supposedly been somewhere else. She wasn't even trying to hide it, Ricky said, sliding a stack of highlighted statements across my kitchen table. She just figured you'd never look. She figured right until now. Meanwhile, Enzo continued seeing Catherine like nothing had changed, but now every interaction was data collection. He saved every text, screenshotted every lie, documented every hotel room and dinner reservation. The voice recording was Enzo's idea. He mentioned that Catherine loved to complain about me during their dates, really get specific about how miserable her fake marriage was. So he started recording those conversations on his phone. The audio quality wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to hear every word she said about how predictable I was, how boring our life together had become, how she'd wasted her best years on someone who would never understand what she deserved. That recording wasn't going to help her. Ricky came through with another discovery midway through week 2. He'd traced a series of cash withdrawals that didn't match any regular expenses. Following the paper trail, he found that Catherine had been funneling money into a separate savings account under just her name for almost 2 years. Not huge amounts, maybe 5 grand total, but the pattern showed this wasn't impulsive. She wasn't just having an affair. She was building an exit strategy. She was planning to leave you Anyway, Ricky explained the affair. Probably sped things up, but look at these deposits. They started before she. Afamit Inchel. She's been preparing her. Way out while you thought you were. Building a life together. That changed. The whole picture. This was planned. A long-term scam that I'd been too. Trusting to recognize. The hardest part was acting normal at home. Every morning, I woke up next to a woman who'd been sleeping with someone else for half a year. I'd lie there for a few minutes before she woke up, just looking at her face, trying to figure out where the woman I married had gone. Maybe she'd never existed. Then she'd wake up and I'd smile and we'd have coffee together. And I'd kiss her goodbye before work. The performance wore me out. Some nights, I'd sit in my truck in the driveway for 10 minutes before going inside just to get my head right, just to put the mask back on. Then I'd remember the recordings and the texts, the way she laughed with Enzo about how easy I was to fool. And the grief would turn into something harder, something that could wait. Her sister Daphne came over one weekend, just like Catherine had mentioned. Her boyfriend Tyler came along, a decent guy who clearly had no idea his girlfriend was a professional accomplice. I watched the sisters exchange coded looks all evening, little signals, inside jokes. They thought they were being subtle. They weren't. Tyler and I ended up on the back porch while the sisters did whatever scheming sisters do. He worked in commercial real estate, had plans to propose to Daphne within the year. Poor guy had no clue. Had Daphne ever mentioned wanting to elope? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Catherine keeps saying her sister wants to lock things down quick. Tyler frowned. She hasn't said anything like that. We've only been together a year and change. I figured we'd take our time. Do it right. Smart man. Never rush into major commitments. He smiled. That's exactly what my dad says. By the end of week 3, I had enough. A folder with photographs, recordings, bank statements, and text screenshots. Not a perfect case, but a solid one. Sam thought it was enough to file confidently. Ricky had found enough financial inconsistencies to raise serious questions. Enzo had documented enough lies to make her story fall apart. Margaret said we had a strong negotiating position, which was lawyer speak, for she's not going to like what's coming. The only question left was when and where to make my move. Catherine's parents hosted a family dinner every month at their place. Her dad, Jacob, was a retired contractor who'd always treated me like a son, more supportive than my own father had ever been. Her mom, Diane, was kind but oblivious, the type who assumed the best about everyone because it was easier than dealing with reality. The extended family rotated through these dinners, a parade of aunts and uncles and cousins who all believed Catherine was the golden child of the family. The next monthly dinner was Sunday. The timing was perfect. I called Enzo that night. How do you feel about crashing a family dinner? There was a long pause. Then he laughed. I thought you'd never ask. The week leading up to the family dinner was all about staying patient. Catherine had no idea what was coming. She spent the week complaining about her manager at work, doom scrolling social media and sneaking text to Enzo whenever she thought I wasn't paying attention. I caught her smiling at her phone at least a dozen times. The strangest part was how normal everything felt on the surface. We ate dinner together, watched TV together, had conversations about groceries and utility bills and whether we should get the gutters cleaned before fall. 6 years of marriage had built up these routines, these patterns, and they just kept running on autopilot, even though the whole thing was about to blow up. Wednesday night, she told me she loved me like it was just part of the routine. I set it back because keeping the mask on was easier than starting a war early. I finalized the financial transfers on Thursday. Ricky had helped me set up a new account at a different bank, one where Catherine's name appeared nowhere. Everything I could legally move went there. Our joint account still had enough to cover bills and not raise suspicion, but the savings I'd built over 10 years of running my business, the emergency fund, the investment accounts, all of it was now protected. When Catherine eventually tried to access those funds, she'd find nothing but dust and a very unpleasant surprise. Margaret called Friday afternoon to confirm the divorce papers were ready. She walked me through the filing one more time, made sure I understood the timeline, and reminded me that the evidence we had was strong, but not guaranteed to produce any particular outcome. I picked up the papers that afternoon, held them in my hands for a long time, sitting in my truck in the parking lot outside Margaret's office. 6 years of marriage, reduced to a stack of legal ease and exhibit numbers. It should have felt like failure. Instead, it just felt like the end of something that had needed to end for a long time. Sam came over that evening while Catherine was at her book club, which was actually Enzo's apartment. We sat on my back porch and reviewed the plan one final time, the timing, the sequence, the backup plans if something went sideways. You're sure about including the sister? He asked. That's going to cause a lot of collateral damage. Dafa's been lying to her own boyfriend for 6 months straight, all to help Catherine run her double life. Tyler deserves to know he's been building a future with someone who can't tell the truth. Fair point. Just making sure you've thought it through. Bro, I've thought about nothing else for 3 weeks. I know exactly what I'm doing. Sam nodded. He'd been skeptical at first back when I told him about the guy at the restaurant and when I'd found on Catherine's phone. Not skeptical of the facts, just worried about me, whether I was handling it okay, whether I was going to do something stupid. He'd relaxed once he saw how methodical I was being about the whole thing. Saturday night, Enzo and I had our final coordination meeting in a parking lot behind a grocery store. We'd gotten paranoid about texting or calling, convinced that somehow Catherine would discover our alliance. Probably unnecessary, but neither of us wanted to take chances this close to the end. You show up 30 minutes after I explained, leaning against his car. I'll text you the address when I'm ready. Her dad will answer the door. By that point, I'll have already mentioned you by name. He'll let you in just to get answers. And then what? Then you tell them your side, how you met her, what she told you about me, the whole thing. Enzo was quiet for a minute. This is going to blow up her whole life. Yeah, you okay with that? I thought about it. She's been living a lie for 6 months, probably longer based on what Ricky found. She's been taking my money, using my trust, building an exit plan, while I thought we were building a marriage. So yeah, I'm okay with it. He nodded slowly. All right then. 30 minutes after your text, Sunday morning, I woke up next to Catherine for the last time as her husband. She was sleeping peacefully, breathing steady, probably dreaming about whatever future she'd imagined with Enzo, a future that was never going to happen. I made coffee, sat on the back porch, and watched the sun come up. It was going to be a beautiful day. The family dinner was at Jacob and Diane's house, a big ranch-style home they'd owned for 30 years. Cars already lined the driveway. When we arrived, aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole crew. Catherine was in a great mood, chattering about some drama at her office, completely unaware that her own drama was about to play out in front of everyone she'd spent her life trying to impress. Inside, the house smelled like Diane's homemade bread, hugs all around, the usual small talk about weather and traffic. And did you see the game last week? Jacob pulled me aside to ask about a plumbing issue in their rental property, and I promised to send one of my guys over Monday. Normal family stuff. Daphne arrived with Tyler about 20 minutes later. She was dressed in something expensive that Tyler had probably paid for. He shook my hand, made some joke about fantasy football, and wandered off to talk to one of Catherine's uncles about investment strategies. Genuinely nice guy. Dinner was the usual chaos. Too many conversations happening at once. People passing dishes and interrupting each other. I ate, contributed to discussions about nothing important, watching the clock on the wall tick towards 0 hour. Catherine was in perfect form that night, charming, attentive, laughing at all the right moments. She touched my arm while she spoke, complimented her mom's cooking, asked her father about his golf game, the perfect daughter, the perfect wife. After the main course, everyone migrated to the living room for coffee and Diane's legendary apple crisp. Conversations settled into the comfortable murmur of a family that spent decades in each other's company. Jacob was telling a story about a job site mishap from the 80s. Daphne was showing Tyler something on her phone, probably house listings they'd been looking at. Catherine was laughing at something her aunt said. This was my moment. I stood up and asked for everyone's attention. The room gradually quieted. All eyes turned to me. Catherine looked over with curiosity, probably expecting some kind of announcement about house renovations or maybe a surprise trip. Her parents smiled. I need to share something with everyone, I said. Something I've discovered recently about my marriage. Catherine's smile flickered. I pulled out the folder, started with the photographs, all from Enzo's phone and their text history, laid them on the coffee table one by one, letting each image tell its own story. A selfie of them at a downtown restaurant sitting close, sharing dessert. A photo outside a hotel lobby, his arm around her waist. A picture she texted him from Daphne's apartment building at 10 o'clock on a night she told me she was working late on a project deadline. These were taken over the past 6 months, I said. My voice was steady. The man in these photos is named Enzo. He's been sleeping with my wife since April. For a second, nobody moved. Then everyone moved at once. Jacob started to stand, then sat back down. Diane made a small wounded noise. One of the aunts said, "Oh my God," loud enough that it carried across the room. Catherine shot to her feet, knocking her coffee cup off the side table, and it shattered on the floor, but nobody moved to clean it up. This is insane, Catherine said, her voice too loud. You can't just accuse me of I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm presenting documentation. I played the first recording. The room went completely silent as Catherine's voice filled it, talking about her boring husband and how easy he was to fool and how she couldn't wait to start her real life with someone who actually appreciated her. Her own words, her own voice broadcast to everyone she'd ever tried to deceive. When the recording ended, several people started talking at once. Jacob was asking Catherine something I couldn't make out. Diane was crying. The uncle, who'd been talking about investments earlier, looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. Catherine was trying to explain her words tumbling over each other. Something about context and venting and how I was twisting things. That recording is taken out of context. She tried. I was venting to a friend about. That's when the doorbell rang. Jacob stood slowly, probably grateful for any excuse to leave the room. He walked to the front door, and when he came back 30 seconds later, Enzo was following behind him. Catherine gasped. She actually stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the edge of the rug. Everyone, I said. This is Enzo. My wife told him she was separated and filing for divorce. He had no idea she was still married until 3 weeks ago. Enzo looked uncomfortable, which made sense. A room full of strangers staring at him like he was a piece of evidence. Hey, he said, not exactly eloquent, but what do you say in that situation? Yeah, so your daughter told me she was basically single. Divorce was supposedly happening any day. Turns out that wasn't even close to true. Catherine turned on him. Fear. Becoming fury. You helped him do this. You helped him humiliate me. You did this to yourself. I just kept receipts. Jacob's voice cut through everything. Low and flat and dangerous. Catherine, is any of this true? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For once in her life, the words wouldn't go me. There's more, I said. Daphne. Daphne's face went white. Tyler, who'd been watching the chaos unfold like a spectator at a car wreck, suddenly looked directly at his girlfriend. I pulled out the second folder. Screenshots of text conversations between the sisters. Daphne coaching Catherine on which alibis to use. Daphne confirming she'd covered when Tyler asked where she'd been. Daphne laughing about how easy it was to fool everyone. She's been covering for Catherine this entire time. I explained every fake alibi, every coordinated lie, every time Catherine claimed to be with her sister. Daphne backed it all up. She's been lying to you, Tyler, for 6 solid months. Tyler took the printouts, read them slowly. His face went through the same journey everyone else's had already traveled. Confusion, then understanding, then cold, quiet anger. You told me you were visiting your mother, he said to Daphne, his voice flat. You told me you had food poisoning. You told me your car broke down 3 different times. Tyler, please let me explain. No. He handed the screenshots back to me. Don't contact me. He walked out without another word. The front door closed behind. Daphne collapsed into tears. Catherine was still frozen in the middle of the room. Their mother was sobbing into a napkin. And Jacob, the man who treated me like his own son for 6 years, walked over and put his hand firmly on my shoulder. What do you need from me? He asked. Quietly. Nothing, sir. I just needed you to know the truth before I filed. You have it. Whatever you're doing. Next, I supported completely. I reached into the folder one final time and pulled out the divorce papers. Walked over to Catherine, who flinched backward, like I was going to hit her in place. The documents firmly in her shaking hands. You've been served. Happy anniversary. The weeks following the family dinner were chaotic. Catherine didn't take the exposure well. Not that I expected her to. She showed up at one of my job sites the week after the dinner, stood in the parking lot, screaming about how I'd humiliated her in front of everyone she loved. My guys just stood there awkwardly until she ran out of steam and drove off. Nobody knew what to say afterward. I just went back to work. She tried hitting me where she thought it had hurt, calling a couple clients and posting vague betrayal stuff online, but I'd already warned my main accounts, and the internet sympathy didn't last once her own cousin basically implied she was lying. The posts quietly disappeared, and so did her momentum. Daphne was having her own problems. Tyler had cut her off completely after walking out of that dinner, blocked her number, blocked her on everything, told their mutual friends exactly why. Within 2 weeks, he was apparently seeing someone else, which might have been petty, or it might have just been how he coped. Either way, Daphne blamed Catherine for the whole thing, and Catherine blamed me, and their family dinners turned into cold silences and excuses not to show up. Jacob checked in with me a few times during those weeks, called to see how I was doing, asked if I needed anything. He apologized once formally for his daughter's behavior, said he'd raised her better than that and didn't understand where things had gone wrong. I told him it wasn't his fault. Some people just turn out the way they turn out, regardless of how they were raised. He appreciated that the divorce itself was a grind. Margaret was good at her job, but good lawyers can't make the legal system move faster than it wants. 2. There were filings and responses, and counter-filings. Catherine's attorney tried to negotiate, then tried to stall, then seemed to accept the inevitable. The first settlement offer came about 3 weeks in. Catherine rejected it. The second offer came a month later. She rejected that, too. Margaret warned me she might try to drag things out, either to punish me or hoping I'd get tired and agree to worse terms just to be done with it. But Catherine ran out of rope before I ran out of patience. Maybe her lawyer finally got through to her. Maybe she ran out of money. Either way, she signed the third offer 2 days before we were supposed to appear before a judge. The terms weren't perfect, but they were fair given the circumstances. I kept the house and the business assets. She got a settlement that was smaller than it would have been if she'd just cooperated. From the start, the house was finally mine alone that weekend. It felt strange at first, being there without anyone else. The furniture was the same. The pictures on the walls, minus a few she'd taken, were the same, but the whole place felt lighter somehow, like something heavy had finally been carried out of it. Ricky and Sam helped me clean out the stuff she'd left behind. Boxes of clothes she hadn't bothered to collect, decorations she'd picked out that I'd never really liked, wedding photos I couldn't look at anymore. We loaded it all into a storage unit, and I told her where the key was. Not my problem after that. The first few weeks on my own were an adjustment. You build habits over 6 years with someone. You get used to another person's presence, their routines, the sound of them moving around the house. Suddenly, all of that was gone, but the silence was clean, not the heavy, suffocating quiet of living with someone you couldn't trust. Just ordinary alone, the kind that's actually peaceful once you stop fighting it. 3 months after the divorce finalized, life had settled into something almost normal. I was at a sports grill with a crew watching a playoff game on the big screens. Enzo had become a regular by then. What started as a necessary alliance had turned into actual friendship. He got along with Sam and Ricky, and none of us felt weird about how we'd all met anymore. We were in our usual booth, wings on a table, arguing about a call the ref had blown when Ricky elbowed me and nodded toward the door. Catherine had just walked in. She spotted me almost immediately, stood there for a second like she was working up the nerve, then started walking over. She looked rough, tired around the eyes, wearing the kind of fake confidence that fools nobody. She stopped at our table, saw Enzo sitting next to me. Her face did something complicated. I need to talk to you, so talk in private. This is fine. She stood there caught between leaving and saying whatever she'd come to say. The table had gone quiet. Even the game seemed to fade into background noise. I made mistakes, she finally said. I know that, but 6 years has to count for something. We could try again. I've been thinking about it, and I really think we could. No, you didn't even let me finish. Didn't need to. The answer's no. Her expression shifted. That old flash of anger I remembered from every argument we'd ever had. You're really going to sit there with him? She gestured at Enzo and act like you're the victim here, like you didn't blow up my entire life. Enzo just shrugged. You told me you were getting divorced. Turns out that was a lie. Seems like you blew up your own life. That was all he said. One line delivered. Flat. And then he went back to his wings. Like she wasn't worth the effort. It hit harder than any insult could have. Catherine's voice went up. You're all sitting here judging me. You have no idea what I went through in that marriage. You have no idea. Ma'am, the manager had appeared out of nowhere. Big guy, looked like he dealt with rowdier crowds than this one. You're going to need to keep it down or step outside. I'm having a conversation with you're making a scene. Take it outside or I'll walk you out myself. The whole place was watching now. That specific quiet where everyone's pretending not to stare. Catherine looked around, realized she'd lost whatever audience she thought she had, and something in her just deflated. This isn't over, she said to me, but there was nothing behind it. She turned and walked out. The manager watched her go, nodded at our table like, sorry about that, and went back to work. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. Then Ricky let out a breath. Well, that was something. That was awkward is what it was. Sam said, you good? I was actually seeing her like that, desperate and flailing and completely out of moves. I thought I'd feel something. Satisfaction maybe, or guilt, but I just felt tired of the whole thing. Yeah, I'm good. The game came back into focus. Someone on screen made a play worth arguing about. Enzo said something about the spread. Ricky flagged down the waitress for more wings. And just like that, we were back to normal. Wings and bad calls and the kind of easy conversation you have with people who actually have your back. Catherine was probably driving home right now, replaying the whole thing in her head, figuring out who to blame. I grabbed another wing, watched the game, and didn't think about her again for the rest of the night. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come